Moonrise, Chapter 4, Visions. The car ride to our house was made in complete silence, but I knew that everyone was yelling at him in their heads. I sat in the front seat as I scanned the possible futures carefully. I was very worried. Jasper was completely decided about what he was going to do, but I always saw Edward coming in at the very end, no matter which way he came from. My vision shifted for half a second, but that was enough for me. Edward would not hurt Jasper. I would not allow it. The vision would shift back to normal, and then shift again. I knew Edward was looking at my visions and learning how Jasper was going to accomplish this. Every time I looked, Jasper was getting cut off by Edward earlier and earlier. I glanced at Edward and then looked away. "Stop that, Edward. It can't happen this way. I won't let it." He didn't answer me, but I knew he was still watching. I cut the vision off and looked farther away. It was too vague, though, so I soon gave up. Edward parked in the garage, and we walked out of the car in silence. I was still looking into the future when we walked into the house. Esme, Carlisle, and Edward were all on the east side of the conference room, as Rosalie, Emmett, and Jasper sat on the opposite side of the table. I took my seat by Esme, rubbing my head in annoyance, as nothing was setting in.
"I am sorry."
Edward was the first to speak.
"I didn't mean to put any of you at risk. It was thoughtless, and I take full responsibility for my hasty action,"
he stated quietly.
Rosalie glared at him.
"What do you mean, take full responsibility? Are you going to fix it?" she growled.
"Not the way you mean,"
he said, as he tried to keep his voice even.
"I am willing to leave, if that makes things better," he said.
"No," Esme said. "No, Edward."
"It's just for a few years," he told her. "Esme's right, though," Emmett spoke up. "You can't go anywhere now. That would be the opposite of helpful. We have to know what people are thinking now more than ever," he said. "Alice will catch anything major," Edward disagreed quickly. "I think Emmett is right, Edward. The girl will be more likely to talk if you disappear," said Carlisle. "She won't say anything," he insisted. "You don't know her mind," Carlisle stated.
That was true. Bella's mind was the only one that Edward couldn't read.
"I know this much. Alice, back me up," he said to me.
I looked at him wearily. "I can't see what will happen if we just ignore this," I stated as I glanced at Jasper and Rosalie. I couldn't see that future. Rosalie and Jasper were too decided on what they were going to do. They wouldn't let this one slide. Rosalie's hand slapped down on the table. "We can't allow the human a chance to say anything. Carlisle, you must see that. Even if we decide to leave, it isn't safe to leave stories behind. We live so differently than the rest of our kind. You know that there are those that would take any chance they could get to point fingers. We have to be more careful than anyone else," she said.
"We've left rumors behind us before," Edward told her.
"Just rumors and suspicions, not eyewitnesses and evidence," she told him.
"Evidence?" Edward scoffed.
I saw Jasper nodding, his eyes hard.
"Rose," Carlisle started, but she stopped him.
"Let me finish, Carlisle. It doesn't have to be anything big. She hit her head today. It could turn out to be something more serious than it looked. Every mortal has the chance of going to sleep and not waking up. The others would expect us to clean up our mess. This should be Edward's job, but it looks like it's totally beyond him. You know I am capable of control. I would leave no evidence behind me," she said.
"Yes, Rosalie. We all know how proficient an assassin you are," Edward snarked. Rosalie hissed at him. "Edward, please.
Carlyle said. Rosalie, I looked the other way in Rochester because I felt you were owed that. The men you killed had wronged you. This is not the same situation. The Swan girl is an innocent, he told Rosalie. It's not personal, Carlyle. It's to protect us all, Rosalie stated. I know you mean well, Rosalie, but I would like for our family to be worth protecting. Every life is precious, he said. It will be fine, Rose, Emmett said as he patted her shoulder. The question is whether we should move on, Carlyle said. No, we just got settled. I don't want to start my sophomore year again, Rosalie moaned. You could keep your present age, of course, Carlyle told her. And have to move again that much sooner? She asked as Carlyle shrugged. I like it here, she said. We don't have to decide now. Edward said the girl will keep silent. Rosalie snorted. They continued to talk as Edward's eyes floated to Jasper. Jasper, he said. Jasper looked at him with an emotionless face. She won't pay for my mistake. I won't allow that, Edward told him. She benefits from it then. She should have died today. I would only be setting that straight, Jasper told him. I will not allow it, Edward said again, with more meaning. Jasper's eyebrows shot up. He was clearly surprised. He shook his head. I won't let Alice live in danger, even the slightest danger. You don't feel about anyone the way I feel about her, Edward, and you haven't lived through what I've lived through, whether you've seen my memories or not. You don't understand, Jasper said. That was another thing. Edward really didn't understand. He may have seen everything in Jasper's head, but there was a difference between watching it happen and living through it. Jasper did have a lot of reason to worry about this. If the Volturi ever found out, it would get us in a lot of trouble, probably more than we could get ourselves out of. I am not disputing that, Jasper, but I am telling you now that I will not let you hurt Isabella Swan, Edward replied. They stared at each other for a long moment, and then I stepped in. Jas, I said. They held each other's gaze for a while longer, and then Jasper turned to me. Don't bother telling me that you can protect yourself, Alice. I already know that. I've still got to... I cut him off. That is not what I was going to say. I was going to ask you for a favor, I said. Edward's jaw dropped, and everyone but Jasper and I turned to look at him. I know you love me. Thanks. But I would really appreciate it if you didn't try to kill Bella. First of all, Edward is serious, and I don't want you two to fight. And second, she is my friend. At least she's going to be, I said. The vision was rock solid. My hand around her shoulders, and her arm around my waist. Both of us had a smile on our faces. But, Alice, Jasper breathed. His face was torn, doing what he wanted, or doing what I asked of him. I'm going to love her someday, Jas. I will be very put out if you don't let her be, I said quietly. Then I received the vision I was looking for. Ah, I sighed. See, Bella is not going to say anything. There is nothing to worry about, I said confidently. Alice, what does this mean? Edward asked. I told you there was a change coming. I don't know, Edward, I told him. I locked my jaw as soon as I saw the future and immediately started to think of Jasper, but he was still shocked at what I said. What, Alice? What are you hiding? He asked me as soon as he knew what I was doing. I shook my head, and I heard Emmett grumble. Is this about the girl? Is this about Bella? He asked me, and then I slipped on hearing her name, but I recovered immediately. Edward caught it, though.
"No!" he shouted, and was on his feet in a flash. His chair hit the ground with a thud. "Edward," said Carlyle. It solidified. Every moment you are more decided. There are only two outcomes for her now, I whispered. No. Edward denied what I was saying. Will somebody please let the rest of us know what's going on? Emmett asked. I have to leave, Edward said to me. Edward, we've already been over that. That will only get the girl talking. You have to stay and deal with this, Emmett said loudly. I don't see you leaving. I don't think you can leave anymore, I said to him. Think about it. Think about leaving, I said in my head. I'm not entirely sure of Jasper, Edward. If he thinks that she's a threat to us... I don't hear that, he told me. Not at the moment. Would you leave her unprotected? Why are you doing this to me? Edward groaned. I love her too, or I will. It's just not the same, but I want her around. Love her too? He asked. You are so blind, Edward. Can't you see where you're heading? Can't you see where you already are? It is more inevitable than the sun rising in the east. See what I see. I tried to show him the vision, but he wouldn't listen. No, I don't have to follow that course. I will leave. I will change the future, he said to me. You can try, I said doubtfully. Oh, come on, Emmett bellowed. Pay attention. Alice sees him falling for a human. How classically Edward, Rosalie gagged. What? Emmett said. Is that what's been going on? Tough break, Edward. Emmett laughed. Fall for a human? Esme asked. For the girl he saved today? Fall in love with her? What do you see, Alice? Exactly, Jasper demanded, as he looked over at me. It all depends on whether he is strong enough. Either he will kill her, which will really irritate me, or she'll be one of us someday, I finished. Rosalie gasped at hearing this. That is not going to happen. Either one, Edward protested. I ignored him and continued. It all depends. He may be strong enough not to kill her, but it will be close. It will take a lot of control, more than Carlyle has. He may be strong enough. The only thing he can't do is stay away from her. That's a lost cause, I stated. The room was silent. Everyone was staring at him as he stared at me. Well, this complicates things, Carlyle said after a moment. I'll say, Emmett laughed. I say the plan remains the same, though. We will stay and watch, and no one will hurt the girl, Carlyle said. No, I can agree to that. If Alice sees only two ways. Jasper was cut off by Edward. No, no, Edward said in distress. Then he stalked out of the room and ran from the house at top speed. What is he going to do? Emmett asked me. He is going to try to prove me wrong. It won't last for long, though, so there's no point of him trying at all, I said to them as I stood. I left the room without another word, and Emmett and Rosalie left as well. I walked into my room and continued into the closet. I heard Jasper come in as well, and I quickly changed clothes. I put on a pair of black sweatpants and a hot pink tank top and walked out of the closet. Jasper was lying on our bed, looking up at the ceiling. I went to sit beside him and ran my fingers through his hair. Thank you, Jas, I whispered as I looked down at him. He took one of my hands and brought it up to his lips. Anything, love, he told me quietly. I laid my head against him and felt his arms wrap around me securely. I just don't want anything to happen to you,
he informed me. Nothing will, and you worry too much, I murmured to him. He ruffled my hair. I have my reasons to worry about you, he said quietly. And those reasons would be? I asked as I raised my head to look at him. Well, the main reason is you're my wife, and I love you very much. Hence I worry about you. What would I do if I, as a horrible husband, let something happen to you? He said to me. I giggled and cuddled up against him. I know you would never let anything happen, and anyways, I can take care of myself, I said to him. I know you can, he murmured to me, as he planted a tender kiss on my forehead.